I'm Lorian, and this is episode 20 of Knitting Monologues. It is Sunday, January 12th, and my house is super quiet. Both of my kids went back to college this morning, and my heart's a little broken. It's always sad to see them go. We had a great month with them home. The first part of it was just chock full of activities and holidays, and the second half was a lot more chill, and we really needed that. So I was back to work January 2nd actually, I was back to work for the whole week last week. Kids were, didn't have too much to do. They could keep decompressing, but really they're excited to get back to their routines and schedules. And I'm excited to come back and chat with you about what I've been working on. The first thing I thought I would do is a quick tally, have my little index card here, of my finishes for 2024. So I start the year with a list of things I plan to make. A few things get added sometimes along the way. Not everything happens as planned, but it's my version of a make 9. It's usually quite a bit more than 9. So I just tally up the quantity of items that I've made by category. I don't do anything with this. I don't do yardage. I just found it kind of interesting to look back on and see what types of items I ended up making. So as by far and away, I made the most pullover sweaters, long sleeves. That was 15. And I would say these are all knit. Maybe there are some crochet embellishments, but these are mostly all knitting. I made 3 short sleeve sweaters, 3 cardigans, 3 vests or tank tops, and 0 socks. It was not a sock knitting year. 4 pairs of mittens, 6 hats. I think those were all in the first quarter of the year because I don't remember knitting any hats otherwise. 3 shawls, 2 baby items, and 2 bags, which were predominantly knit, but I think those are the ones with the crochet embellishment. My math gets me to 41 total, and that's where 2024 was. I don't compete with anyone or anything. I don't even look back year to year, although I do have the list from last year, from the prior year, from 23. I keep it in the notes app on my phone, just so I have it handy. My plans, I'm not sure if I didn't put the tallies in for last year. I just think it's kind of interesting to see where I spent my time, what types of items I made. I am doing well with my intention as far as shawl knitting, and not to grow my shawl collection by too much each year, and I'm moving sweaters slowly into that category as well. Let me also, without, in some ways I feel silly recording an episode today. There are life-threatening fires going on in Los Angeles, which is the other side of the country from where I live, but I do know people with family there, and just people are there, and it's a very scary time, and it has truly been days of devastation, and it's going to take some time for things to settle down and life to come back to whatever the new or next normal is. So my heart is with the people who were impacted by that, and thinking of you. And if you have friends and family involved, impacted, I am thinking of you too, because it is very, very scary. It has been very heartwarming to hear about people opening up their spaces, homes, businesses to help the people who were impacted. But the imagery and the depiction, the devastation is really quite real. I do believe that climate change is real, regardless of the cause of this, which I think is, TBD if ever to be figured out. Okay. I'm gonna get into some knitting and a couple of finishes, work in progress, a couple of brand new cast-ons, one of which involves some new yarn, and just we'll let it roll. I also need your feedback on some ideas towards the end. If you have any, your suggestions are always welcome. As a reminder for this year, I am trying to knit, especially sweaters, garments from designers that are new to me, or less frequently the ones that I just sort of pop into my mind, which is because their beautiful designs have been shown to me over and over through marketing and promotion, and really to just try to experience other designers' ways of writing patterns. So with that, this is not a new to me designer, but she is. I did actually test knit the companion cowl, which made me say I must knit this vest. So this is a new finish. This is the Icing on the Cake vest. It is a pattern by Beth Macdonald Stone. The yarn that I used is by Fiber Macgyver. It is the Suri Silk DK, which has a put up of 246 yards per 100 grams, 90% baby Suri, 10% silk. I love this. It is really, truly hot off the needles. I just finished it yesterday so that I could show you today. Look at this texture. Oh, it's just so yummy, and it is the softest garment. It has this really well thought out fold over section here of stockinette, and you loop through a ribbon. I couldn't decide which color. I went to the craft store yesterday and I got this blue, which my daughter really liked the most, so that's what went in here. I also picked a champagne color and a rust red, which would really just be more of a tone on tone. So I think any of those would work. For now, I've got the blue, happy with that. This was just such a work of love. I know the designer's a friend, the dyer is a friend. The colorway is called Shaddix. It's inspired by another friend's, is a gorgeous redhead. It is just the perfect rust color, and I'm super happy with how it came out. I knit, I think it was the size 2, but my gauge, this is what the yarn is like. It is this just fluffy stuff, and I can't remember. I think it might be designed for a DK and held with a carry along yarn, which might make it closer to worsted. I had to drop needle size, two sizes of needle. I was still able to get a soft enough fabric out of that, but it made it much denser than the cowl that I had knit, which I think I knit on gauge, but again, that's just a cowl, so it doesn't have to fit your body. If I recall correctly, my swatch ended up being maybe 1 stitch more than the gauge called for, which was why I felt comfortable knitting the size, which was right around my bust size, maybe a little bit larger. The pattern calls for some positive ease, and I picked the size I think I got. I mean, it's just fitted. It's just what I wanted, to be honest. I did lengthen the armholes. That is an option in the pattern. I think my body length is about the recommended length, but since my armholes are longer, it's top down, the body falls a little bit lower. I'm just super happy with it. And so I had to do a little bit of, modification simply on proportions because of the yarn I used wasn't quite matching the gauge of what was called for, and just based on my desired proportions for this vest. To be honest, I couldn't put it down when I was working on it. All right, next is a finished object from late December. is a sweater for my husband. This is Riddari, which is a colorwork yoke, bottom up design. It is a pattern by Védís, Jónsdóttir for Ístex. Here is the full length view. Let's bring it back here. So, my husband, for all the years I've been knitting, it's really only the last maybe 2 years that he has come to appreciate and enjoy wearing hand knit sweaters. He's always been good with hats and scarves, but he's always enjoyed those. But he really never was as interested in a sweater, didn't think he would wear one. And then I had knit a sweater on me that just didn't turn out proportion-wise to fit well. And I said, why don't you try it on? He did. He's gotten compliments on it by other guys, and he kind of thought, oh, maybe there's something there. So I had purchased this yarn, this brownish color, it's from Twist of Fate Spinnery. It's their worsted base, 250 yards per they're heavy skein, so a little over 100 grams. It might be a little more than 250 yards also. This is they either sell wool or they sell 50-50 alpaca and wool. This is the 50-50. And I had bought a sweater's quantity for him in the fall of 2023, not knowing quite what it would turn into. But I thought it was a good color for him. And he actually went with me to Fiber Festival of New England this past fall, and he fell in love with a yarn that needed to be custom dyed because they didn't have the quantity we would need. So I said, well, while we're waiting for that, let me start with the yarn that I've set aside for you. And we searched patterns, and he has nothing like this. All of his other sweaters that I've knit him, and I think he has three sweaters and a vest. So the vest aside are raglan constructions. They may be sewn in pieces, or they may have been top down, but they're all raglan. This is a yoke, so it is a little bit of a different fit. The other thing is Todd likes a fairly fitted collar, but he has a big head. So I had to play around with the proportions on this sweater. I took one of the raglan sweaters that he loves and took some of those measurements and tried to find the right size. That ended up for him being very different size in body than in sleeve. So because it was bottom up, that was fine. I just started the sleeve in one size and the body in the other size. I realized once I got to the yoke, I probably needed to land somewhere in the middle, maybe on the larger size, because I was gonna need a certain stitch count for the yoke and the shoulders. So I think that itself maybe ended up being a third size, and I also needed to accommodate for the pattern motif. Fortunately, it worked out. And he's happy. He's enjoying wearing it. I did have to knit the bind off, which is pretty much the end of the sweater, 3 different ways until we got one that fit over his head but left it snug enough for his preferences. The other yarn that I used, this sort of light color, it might be reading white, but it's actually an icy light blue, is the Védís from Knitcrate Ambient Worsted. Now this is a discontinued yarn as far as I know. The color is called Fresco. You might be able to still get it in a D-stash. It's a really sweet, like I said, ice blue. The dark brown, which is the second most used color in this sweater, is farm yarn from HillTop Meadow Farm. And it's a natural but very, very dark yarn. I bought this yarn at Connecticut Sheep and Wool a couple of, maybe 2 or 3 shows ago, which is an April show, and knit a sweater for myself, and I had some extra. I actually have another skein extra also. Then I might use this in something else that I will show you shortly. And then this russet red-brown color I just love. It is from Hudson and West. Oops. It's the Forge base, which is the worsted base. It is, let's see, 70 merino, 30 coria gel, 235 yards for 100 grams. This is called Red Feather. It's a spectacular color. I must do something great with what's left because there's still quite a bit left. I love it. And generally, he's really happy with it. He's worn it quite a few times. And one thing that I got a little nervous about was I was concerned, since I was using a raglan model to knit a circular yoke sweater, that maybe the raglan had come down lower than his armpit. And while I took his own measurement, I just felt like I needed to add a little length. I probably added a little more length than he needed. So I think for his next sweater, I'm really gonna check his own measurements to be sure. I'm glad I added some length, but I think I needed to fall in between. He's fine with it. If he needed it shortened, I could always cut some of this body out and shorten it and just bind it, Kitchener it back together. Again, this is the Riddari, or just called Riddari. So Todd's happy. So that's my other finished object. I have one active work in progress. This is a great example of a designer new to me. I don't think I've ever knit any of her patterns. I may have knit a hat, but sweater wise, I haven't. And the genesis of this, sometimes, your knitting can sometimes be like chicken and egg. Which comes first, the yarn or the pattern? In this case, it was the yarn. So earlier last year, probably in the early fall, I fell in love with Noro Ito, which is the yarn here, which is a worsted / Aran weight sweater. It comes in these 200-gram balls. This is colorway 60. I knit a circular pullover, no design, just sort of kept increasing, divided for sleeves, knit the body, knit the sleeves. It was just a straight knit, nothing that fancy. I might have done an I-cord collar, just because I really liked that color, and it was discontinued. Of that, I had 2 skeins. This, I have 3 skeins, and I knew I was going to turn it into a cardigan. From my stats, you can hear I've knit many more pullovers than cardigans, and I felt like I could stand to add to the cardigan collection. This, I think I said, is colorway 60. It's Noro Ito. This pattern is the Journey Cardigan by Zielinski. And again, she's kind of a new to me designer. Maybe I've knit a hat. The one thing I've done a little differently, and maybe you can see it here, is every 10th row, I'm doing like a purl row, knitting it from the inside since it's a cardigan. This is a raglan design, has a button band. I will probably not do buttons. Let's see. Really, at this point, I'm knitting it back and forth. I just have to remember that one textured edge round or row every 10th round. And I think as I'm recording this, I might use this chocolate brown because it's sort of picks up the colors in the sweater on the cuffs and the button band. We shall see. One thing to note is when I did the other sweater in Ito, is this is a color changing yarn, and when you're knitting a certain number of stitches in the body, the stripes turn out for the most part certain thickness. There's a certain amount of color. This is these are thicker, but these are shorter. But as you get into the body, they're more or less similar in stripe height. If you do each sleeve one at a time, you end up with thicker stripes from the same yarn. So I may end up knitting these sleeves 2 at a time in a tube is what I call it, rather than 2 at a time, like side by side, like you might knit socks, knitting this tube separate from this tube. You actually create a steek panel, or 2 of them. You steek under the armpits, and I think if I do that, I will do a little video tutorial showing how I went about setting that up and doing it. I learned this idea from, it's not my idea, I learned it from Heidi Kiermaier. Total coincidence. She had put a video up. It's not, there's no voiceover, it's just the visual. she put a video up when she was working with some Noro Ito, not Noro Ito, but a different Noro base. And she did this approach, and a friend brought it to my attention because I was just talking about the very same thing. And it was genius. I used it. You do make a steek, 2 steek panels. You do have to be comfortable cutting your steek, reinforcing and cutting your steek, which for that sweater, a friend of mine used her sewing machine and reinforced. So we'll see. I'm not there yet, but excited. I'm excited to have this. I think it's a fun yarn to have worked with. I love how the colors are turning out. So that is a current work in progress. I have another work in progress, and it's going to be a long-term work in progress. So I have all of these mini skeins from Countdown, and have always admired a couple of blankets, one of which is the Beekeeper quilt, which is a series, a collection of these little hexagonal shapes that then get put together and form a blanket. And so I have decided, I'm not sure what color collection I'm going to use. These are the 3 that I've done so far. I'm knitting them on 2.5 needles. I think I've sized down just based on the fabric I wanted. I have a small bit of filling from something, and I think this is just polyfill. And I'm putting a small amount in. This is going to be a very long-term project. A year, 2 years, hopefully 2 years will be my maximum. That is, again, the Beekeeper quilt by Tiny Owl Knits. And it's just very satisfying to be able to finish one little piece at a time. So I really wanted to make sure I worked some of that into my makes this year. All right. I probably will not show that every video. It's not going to be that interesting for a while. Okay. Let me also then show you 2 more things. The first is going to be new cast-ons, which includes a new acquisition, and the other is going to be, maybe you can offer me some help, some suggestions. So, one of the sweaters that I am planning to knit this year is the Hana, which is a worsted / Aran weight sweater by Junko Okamoto. I found this yarn in a D-stash. It is by Magpie Fibers. It's the Nest worsted, and the colorway is called Twilight Rose. It is 100% non-superwash Corriedale, 210 yards for 100 grams, and I have 7 skeins of it. It is this beautiful dusty purple color, and I've done my swatch because this is non-superwash, and lots of you are going to tell me that's still a bad idea. I know you're going to say that, but I'm not going to wash this. I'm just going to go with it because I have gauge, or close enough, and because the size I'm knitting is, what is it, 49? It's like 11 inches in positive ease. I'm going to be okay. It's going to be great, better than okay. I'm very excited to knit this. This is one of those designers who I've knit a couple of patterns in the past, but not a ton, and I have always found this sweater beautiful. I think the Junko's design, Junko or Junko, someone correct me, designs are works of art. One of my friends is knitting this. One of them knit this maybe a year or 2 ago, and it's knit modularly, so different sections. If you look at the projects that people have done, they're just so interesting. They're all really there are some that look very similar. They're all in kind of a neutral, natural, oatmeal-y color, but there are some that are just so different, and patchworky and creative, and I'm just excited. I'm excited because I found this yarn. I didn't really plan to knit it for this, and then realized it would work, and this pattern was on my list. So I will be starting the Hana sweater, H-A-N-A. Oh, and everything is linked in the notes. I do notes, I don't do editing. And if you're not subscribing, I'll remind you at the end, but please consider subscribing. You can find me here and other places as Yarn Love Turtle. Okay. Next is, maybe this is the only band I have, is I mentioned before that when I was at Fiber Festival of New England, my husband went with me this year and he fell in love with some yarn. He absolutely could not get over the color of this yarn. So I have a swatch here. This is by Dying Wishes Yarn Co. And it is in her, do I have it? Oh, no, I don't. It is in a superwash DK base. I think it's also a put up of 246 yards per 100 grams. This is going, so I wanted, because it's superwash and because my husband is so particular about the fit, I felt much more strongly about knitting a swatch that I will now wash and block and see what happens to it. He's very happy with what he calls the weave, which is the gauge. He likes how this turned out. This is the needle that's recommended. The pattern that I have in mind, I'm going to show you a picture of, is by Petiteknit. And believe it or not, I have never knit, I have knit like one summer sweater by Petiteknit. Is that right? I think so. I know I've knit at least one. I have not knit any winter weight sweaters. Right, this is called the Hanstholm sweater. So it's a very kind of straightforward men's, well, I don't know if it's men's and women's, it might be both. Raglan sweater. I think it's top down. I hope it's top down. I hope that's what we picked. Crew neck in the round, top down. Bingo. And I should be able, so I want to block it though because I want it to get, I definitely need to get the right measurements for him based on how this base blocks out. Because I also we wanted to keep, because there's so much activity in this colorway in itself, I felt that a straightforward, mostly knit sweater was going to be the way to go. There was a sample in her booth that I think had some texture or cabling. It was spectacular, so gorgeous. So I have 8 skeins of this because this was a custom dye and we needed to order it in quantities of 4 or more. Or 4 of increments of 4. So we have 8. And what I will do with the 8 skeins while this is blocking is we're going to unskein all of them, take them out of the bands, lay them out, and pick the 6 or so that I think we need for this sweater, and kind of pick the ones we think are the most similar. I probably will knit this helical. It comes with this great card and the note from Sarah, I think is her name, and some recommendations. In addition, she sent some soak. And it says, proud to offer soak wash and some directions. And she does say that because of the nature of the dyes involved with this color, it could work onto my hands as well as I'm working with it. That did not happen when I knit the swatch, so we shall see. And Todd's very excited for me to get going on this one, but really the yarn only arrived like this past week. Okay. So those are my 2 swatches. I am planning to go and meet up with some friends at Vogue Knitting Live, which starts this Thursday, actually. Classes start and runs through Sunday. We are going to be at the marketplace on Friday evening. If you are there and you see me, please come up, say hi. Don't be shy. It is all good. It will keep me from buying too much as it is, which really I only have plans to buy something to go with this. So I have about 700 or so yards, maybe a little more, of, I don't know the best way to show this. One is in a skein, one is a partial skein, one is in a cape, One is a skein and one is a partial skein. So I think this will be the best way. This. I have this. It's all the same color, but yep. And this partial here. These are sport weight. They are from Yarn Hero. And I would like to find a project to knit them into. Most likely a colorwork sweater or something that will use a good amount of this up. I don't need to use all of it up. My mind immediately goes to those couple of designers whose, again, patterns are always beautiful and presented and promoted and somehow show up in my feed every time. And I really want to try to find someone or something new to me. I have a couple of ideas. I have 2 sweater ideas. I have a fingerless mitt idea, the hat idea, but I do need the contrast, if this is the main color or the solid color to work with. I do have a skein of like it, I can't remember the color name, like a medium blue, but I only have one, and I know I need more. So when I'm at Vogue, this is what I'm going to be shopping for, something to go with this. I will bring it with me because I'm not totally sure what, and I will need to see it. You know, there is a lot going on in here. I used this color in my stripy unicorn with that medium blue, and I'm very happy with how it came out, but there's just as much blue as there is of this. This is, for me, a lot of color to wear in a sweater. So I'm just gonna have to see. I'm not gonna be disappointed if it turns into exclusive, the remains of it turn into only being used for accessories and not a sweater. That is, I shouldn't even say only, being used for accessories and not a sweater, that's totally fine. But if you have any ideas of sweaters or what you would suggest I use this with, and I'm gonna recake this little one, but please let me know. Again, it's sport weight. We'll go with that. The other thing that I'm interested in some pattern suggestions for is this absolutely spectacular hand spun. So my friend Shannon is a spinner, a knitter, beautiful human, and she gave me this as a gift. I love it. Clearly I'm going to be entering a purple phase because that's what's coming. This is worsted weight. It's about 700 yards. Pattern suggestions, welcome. I do have a go-to worsted weight sweater, which is a fairly basic one. I think it's the City Limits by Tanis Lavely of Tanis Fiber Arts. I have knit that a few times with worsted, and it's beautiful. It's a raglan, I think it's a raglan construction. It has a little bit of detail, but I have a couple of those, so I don't really need more of that. I love them. But this needs to become something special. I didn't show it on my plans for this year because I really didn't know what it was going to become, but it really needed to be on the list, like yarn I don't have a plan for. But if you have a suggestion, what is the base? It's BFL Silk, if that helps, 75-25. I mean, what a gift. So I'm treasuring this and need to pick something good for it. And I think that's a wrap. This is my second time recording this because I missed a few things the first time and I didn't want to deal with editing. No, I've tried that. That is a craft in itself. That is an art in itself. So, again, happy 2025. Happy making to you. And if you happen to be at the Marriott Marquis this coming Friday and see me in this vest, please say hi. I look forward to meeting you, and please say hi in the comments to help me with those pattern ideas. Hopefully make them designers, to introduce me to designers I've never met before or never knit from. And truth be told, some of the ones on my list are people I have that are quite popular, prolific, but I just hadn't gotten to them yet. So let me know if you have any suggestions for either of those yarns, what to turn them into and what designers to look at. All right, take care, and I'll see you soon.